folks. Welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric. I am the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And today, are you going to tell me what the beer of the day is or whatever?
No, I don't have a beer of the day because I'm drinking coffee.
Oh, okay. I have the coffee of the day.
Oh, really? What's your coffee of the day?
Folgers Classic Crystals.
Folgers Classic Crystals. Okay, fine. I'll have to send you some coffee. I can send that in the mail.
Let's see. Last week, or last podcast, we promised we were going to talk about demons, and that is what we're going to talk about, which I spent a lot of time. Usually, I do not spend a whole lot of time preparing for these things. We try to talk about subjects that we already kind of know a lot about.
Yeah. Or
know something about. And, but this week I wanted to get all these things right and not say the wrong thing here. So I looked into a lot, and I would say that between this week and next week, you're going to know everything you need to know about demons and the devil and Satan.
Yeah.
But you don't really need to know much. But
no, but hopefully with a view to kind of engaging in a spiritual strategy that helps you avoid the pits that the enemy puts in front of you. Right.
I guess we're going to start out with the names that are mentioned throughout the Bible. Now, there's a guy named Binsfield who at one time wrote the classification of the seven princes of hell. Now, he took a lot of words that were not the actual names of demons. And so it's not like what he had written was ever really accepted as absolute truth. For example, there's a spot in, I think it's Matthew, where Jesus says that you cannot love God and love evil. You either love God and hate evil, or love evil and hate God. And the word he used was mammon.
Mammon. Yeah, that's a confusing word. What does that mean?
Okay, that is probably, I don't think, there's a lot of things we don't know for sure, but this is more or less the love of money. And it's more a manifestation of evil as opposed to a specific demon. Mm-hmm. But Binsfield classifies it as a specific demon. And he does that with several other words in the Bible. So I am not going off what Binsfield says because I think he's incorrect.
There's some of it that might be, okay.
So the names we do have are, number one, Satan, which is the accuser.
Right.
We've got devil, which is divider. And then, of course, the serpent, which is that's a living thing.
Yeah, the garden account, right?
Right. And Lucifer. And, here's the thing.
Is that name used in the Bible?
Yeah. And in the Bible, it describes it as an angel, not as a demon.
Right.
And it can mean... Here's what I don't get, because they say, when you look at the word, they say, what does this mean? They say morning star or light bearer.
Yeah.
As if
light bearer is most like directly what it means. The loose means light, and fer, F-E-R is a bearer, like.
Okay, so where do you get morning star?
I don't know.
I wonder if that's like, as you go through the history of the word, you find slightly different meanings. I guess that's where that comes from.
But like Christopher means Christ bearer, for example.
Okay.
So Lucifer, light bearer.
Also demon, which is just evil spirit.
Right.
And then there's specifically Beelzebub.
So here's, like morning star. So the morning star as let's talk about that for a minute. So the morning star in human experience is the planet Venus, which when it appears in the like immediate pre-dawn sky. So it, in a sense, it heralds the coming of the sun. It's the bearer or the herald of the coming light of day. And so Lucifer would be morning star in that sense. Light bearer and morning star would be kind of the same thing then.
Sometimes it's an evening star, though.
It does show up as the evening star as well, but like I said, that's it's both the planet Venus, but when we talk about it as the morning star and the evening star, that's more the experience of seeing it in the morning. So
okay, well that would make sense. Beelzebub. The word Beelzebub may be a slight mistranslation, meant to be Baal, Baal.
Oh, Baal. Okay,
Baal.
The god that they were
from Cana
making human sacrifices to.
I guess the Canaanites
worshipped, and the Israelites a few times kind of fell into that their cult, sort of.
Some people will say that Beelzebub is actually a mistranslation of Baal. Baal?
Okay. I always heard it as Baal. Yeah.
I always heard it as Baal. But
Ball. Okay.
Either way, it's a ball. So either way, it could mean owner, or it could be Lord of Flies. And there's also something about something about being in the sky that could be translated from that.
Okay.
Now, Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, possibly devil. These are all different. These are not manifestations of evil. They are very specific demons, and they are different ones. I don't think
so. The only generic term that would apply across the board is the term demon.
Demon, maybe devil, but definitely demon.
But there might be a specific demon whose kind of main anti-charism, if you think of it that way, is to divide.
Right.
Okay.
And then
I never thought of that.
We don't know if one of those is the serpent, but we also assume that the serpent is also the same dragon in Revelation, or at least a lot of people think it is, but
the one that's depicted as
we don't know.
Okay.
But so we've got the names. Now, as most people know, demons are fallen angels, and angels were created with certain properties, and they didn't lose those properties once they became demons. So all the things that are natural to an angel would be natural to a demon. Mm-hmm. Probably first and foremost, they do not experience through the senses, through hearing or sight, and things like that. And since they do not sense, they cannot imagine, because imagination is
the calling up of a sensory phantasm.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, we're going to talk a little bit more later about this, but most of the saints, or most of the church fathers, believed that they could plant things into our imagination. They could give us an image or give us a sense of smell on something. Okay.
So here's what I get kind of fuzzy at, like, for example, if can they cause us to experience it as though it's coming from our senses, or can they only cause us to imagine it, but in a way that we know it's imagined?
I think they can do both of those things. If you think, let's talk about an image that you see. Mm-hmm. Several things happen. Number one, there's something there in the air reflecting light.
Yeah.
Since they can manipulate matter, they can do that.
Okay. Well, you haven't established that they can manipulate matter, but
you're right. I haven't yet, but they can.
But let's. Okay. So there's that.
Now, once the light reaches your eyes, it does certain things to the eye itself.
Right.
The way your cones work is different than the way your brain works. So they might be able to manipulate our eyes to make us see something.
Okay.
And then there are the actual senses that take that information and send it to the brain. They might be able to manipulate that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then your brain actually does something with that to make it an image that you can understand. Right. I think if you were going to argue against them being able to do it, that's probably where you would draw the line. But a lot of people will say, yes, they can do that. And some people will go so far as to say they can see something that you are purposefully imagining.
Oh, okay.
So if you're calling up an image, they might be able to know what that image is.
So one of the things it sounds like is that ongoingly, they have this intimate. I don't know if intimate's the right word, but they have a direct, non-sensory, because like you said, they don't have senses. So they must have a direct knowledge of the material world somehow.
Yes.
And so to the extent that your brain does material things in order to, for example, imagine an image, like I can imagine a car, I can imagine a shiny yellow Corvette and driving down the highway,
right,
on a curvy road, that has physical, that something happens physically in my brain for me to imagine that. They can somehow be aware of that.
Right. And I guess in arguing what they can and can't do, I think here is where your argument would basically be how much of that is physical.
Right. Right.
And you're getting into philosophy there. That's a little above me.
Another podcast.
So I'm just saying that it is a possibility, but that's 4 ways that they could make themselves known to us or manifest themselves so that we could sense them.
So I don't know, if you're intending to come back around to this question later or and if you do, we'll save it till then. But if they can do all these things, why doesn't it happen more often? Why aren't we in a constant state of confusion about the world?
We will come to that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. The other part is that their knowledge is part of their nature, as opposed to one of the words Thomas Aquinas uses, that they do not learn discursively, as in they do not draw conclusions one thing from another, like A equals C, right, so D equals B, things like that.
They don't have the capacity to undergo a process of reasoning, basically.
Right.
The knowledge they have is direct.
If they're given knowledge, they automatically know anything that could be drawn from that knowledge.
Okay.
So, and because they can't tell the future, as time goes on, they do know things as they happen. And we know they don't know the future. Well, for example, they don't know when the hour and day is that the Son of Man comes. They don't know that. So,
right.
And we know there's plenty of things they don't know. I think it was in the garden where the demon wanted to know, "Are you the one we're waiting for?" Or no, that was one of the one of the possessions, was it?
One of the what?
Possessions.
Oh,
someone was possessed, and
somebody accused him. Yeah.
And,
are you the one, or do we wait for another?
Right.
And Jesus kind of told him to shut up. He always did that to the demons, didn't he?
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of possession, when we were talking about the different names of the demons and the fact that, oh my gosh, as I had said, that the demons, Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer, these are different demons, and at least as far as we can tell, as opposed to just a manifestation of evil or a manifestation of one demon. And there's further evidence of this in actual exorcisms that have been recorded or documented. There is a point where I think there was one in Iowa where, in an exorcism, the demons asked their name and forced to answer before the exorcism continues, I believe. And this one had said Beelzebub, and they had tried to specify. They wanted to know, is this the prince of all demons? And the demon had replied, no, that he was under Lucifer. He was high in the hierarchy, but he was under Lucifer. It was under Lucifer. And so there is a difference between Lucifer and Beelzebub. At least that's the information we would get, that we would draw from exorcisms that we've documented. Okay. Another point, I want to go back to the name again. because it looks like I forgot to put this in my notes. You'll notice that the titles that we give to the devil are always prince. And it's the prince of darkness, prince of this world, prince of all demons. Right. Because the devil is never king, because we've only got one king.
Okay.
Just pointing that out.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. And it's kind of obvious, but I never thought about it until I was looking at all these different titles that we give it.
Because Christ the King is even the king over the domain of the devil.
Right. Over everything.
Whoever you want to say. He's the universal king of everything, including those who are in hell. Right.
Okay, so we are going to talk more about how they learn next week when we talk about man's interaction with demons.
But before you move on, there's something else you said that now has me intrigued. You were talking about exorcisms and how I don't know if it's certain rites of exorcism or if it's a standard aspect of an exorcism that they force the possessing demon to reveal who he is.
Yeah.
So is this? I mean,
that's part of the exorcist rite.
Christ referred to Satan as the father of lies, but apparently the church has some kind of power in its power of exorcism to like Wonder Woman's golden lasso to they can't lie to the exorcist or something, huh?
Right, and they will try to avoid that question, but making them say their name is a part of gaining power over it. Interesting.
Okay.
Now, as I had said, they can manipulate the physical world. They can manipulate matter.
Right.
And, we find instances of that in the Bible. We also find, there's different ways that something could manipulate things. And here's where I get confused sometimes, because I always thought of things like alchemy as magic.
Oh, okay.
But I hear some of these exorcists talk about, there's one exorcist who carries around this bag of metal objects. He said these are things that possessed people have coughed up. He had weird things in there like chains and can openers. And
so these aren't things that those people swallowed. They're like things that these demons created inside the people.
That's not what this priest believes.
Nothing, but
that's the thing, because they cannot create.
Right, they can only manipulate.
And then there's also, and this happens, I think fairly often, is that a lot of the possessed will vomit, sometimes buckets of things after not eating for days.
Yeah.
And so
it's like, where's that coming from?
I would assume that I'll bet there's a long time where the person doesn't vomit, and then they vomit a whole bunch of stuff, and then they have to not vomit for a while, because I assume what's happening here is that the air is taken in and manipulated, and the atoms are manipulated to make that vomit. But that takes time. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's if they can really manipulate the physical world like that, yeah, that's exactly what it could be. Just the air around them, or even stuff like because there's like modern inquiries into the nature of the physical world, right, and things about certain scales where the world might be more than 3-dimensional and stuff, and so there may be ways that they're pulling the rudiments of matter from some other part of the world nearby or whatever, maybe not even nearby, but into the person, and then
right,
rearranging it into whatever this vomit is. Sometimes apparently objects, and often probably. But yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So knowing that they can manipulate matter to that degree is a little scary.
Yeah.
And they can also manipulate our bodies. They could,
Well, I was going to say,
they possess people, so they can force you to do things you don't want to do. What they cannot do is they do not know your thoughts, and they can't
know your intentions before you act. They might be able to. I don't know if because they don't, as angels, they don't have the capacity for reason they probably can't even guess your intentions based on acts leading up to what you're doing.
I don't know if they could or not. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, they can see our bodies and the way we react to things. So if I see a beautiful woman, they can know that I think she's beautiful by the way what happens in my body.
Right.
Or if I smell chocolate, and they could know that I have a weakness for chocolate, and so because my mouth is watering. So and they must be able to draw some conclusions, not the way we would, but they know what works and what doesn't work to bring us away from God, and they use what works.
Yeah,
but
it's more like a
as we had brought up in another podcast, when they tried to tempt Jesus, they tried the classic things that have always worked on man.
Yeah,
which didn't make any sense, like the bread. Why would they think they could tempt him this way? Because man's always been easily tempted that way.
Yeah, food's always been a weakness, right?
So we don't know how they draw conclusions. They are able to kind of see what's likely to happen. We just don't know exactly how, and we're going to get more into that and how they learn next week anyway. So,
right.
Now one of the big questions I always had is, can they manipulate nature? And
so what do you mean by the difference between manipulate matter and manipulate nature?
Can they create a storm or lightning or earthquakes?
Well, why couldn't they? I mean, if they can create, chains inside of a person's gut, why wouldn't they be able to create a storm?
Right. Well, they can. And, one of the things I always go back to, because for a long time I didn't think they could, but then I always got confused at the story of Tecumseh. Tecumseh,
the Indian?
Yeah. Do you know the story of him?
No.
Okay. So
I only know Tecumseh is the name of an engine.
Right. No, the name of an Indian. An engine. I'm thinking engine.
Engine with an E, not.
It
engine
is the name of an engine, and it's the name of an engine.
It's the name of an engine and an engine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he got famous in his own tribe by predicting. For example, he predicted a. What do you call it? Where the sun gets covered up.
Eclipse?
Eclipse. A solar eclipse.
He predicted one?
He predicted a solar eclipse.
Wow.
By that time, white man could predict them.
Yeah.
So he may have got the information from a white man.
Okay.
But he would predict other things. And he told all the tribes in America, it was mostly the Central America, like in the Ohio Valley. That's where he lived. Okay. And it was mostly those Indians that he dealt with. But he had tried to gather all the tribes. Is
this before a large part of the western expansion then? This is like... What years are we talking about?
Just before the War of 1812.
Okay.
So we really had not moved past the Mississippi River.
Okay.
And he wanted to unite the tribes to get rid of the white man altogether. He was going to, he wasn't going to restrict us somewhere. He was going to keep pushing until we had to go into the ocean and die. That was his plan. Okay. And he had told all of these tribes, there will be a sign when it's time to move. There's going to be a sign that everybody in the entire country, he didn't use the word country, but everybody will know it. Okay. There will be a natural disaster that everybody sees. And it happened. There was an earthquake where there are documents saying that it was so powerful the Mississippi actually changed direction. Wow. It was a huge earthquake that everyone in America felt.
I didn't know this.
And it was at an ideal time where it would have been a good chance to wipe us out, the white man, that is.
Okay.
So I always think of that. How did he know that? If demons can't tell the future, you can't convince me that it was from God.
Given that knowledge,
huh?
Right? Yeah. It's not like God would have revealed something like that. It's.
I mean, he didn't have
salvific message there.
I'm not going to get into the good and bad of we've already done one on the Indians, and
right.
It's not like they were this good people.
So the question is, though, was this earthquake something primed to happen, and somehow some demon somehow managed to make this known to Tecumseh, or was Tecumseh somehow, somehow he had learned that he could, and I don't know whether he's, other than predicting, I don't know anything about his life. Did he do bad things, good things, whatever? I don't know.
He was not a bad person.
Okay. So it's not like he was the kind of guy
who wanted honorable fights, and
who you'd think of as being in league with a devil.
Right, definitely
like that.
not.
So that makes it even more confusing then.
Right, it does. But the only thing I can come up with here is that possibly there was a demon that caused the earthquake. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I mean, he was not a bad Indian. At the same time, he did a lot of predicting. And in the Catholic Church, we recognize that as only one thing. We're not talking about predicting prophecy. The way prophecies. We're talking about right. Petty predictions. Mm-hmm. You're going to break your leg tomorrow, things like that.
Right.
But so I always come back to that when I think about demons manipulating nature.
That's a pretty big one.
Yeah. According to most of the stuff I read, they can manipulate nature. But then we get into, at least it's within their nature. That ability is within their nature.
To be able to manipulate matter, right.
Right. Now, what stops this from happening is not their nature. What stops it from happening is God's law. Because they are subject to God's laws.
There's a thing in the Bible where God, and I forget I think it's in Genesis, but it's like things are going on for a certain point, and then God says,
no more.
Of the demons, you're not going to be able to do this anymore.
Right. We're going to get to that.
And I forget exactly. Okay.
Genesis 6. Okay. So just now it's enough to know that the reason there isn't absolute havoc on earth is because God doesn't allow it. And that's the only thing that keeps the demons from destroying us. Mm-hmm. And so that brings me to kind of a timeline that I wanted to talk about. And it starts with God creating the angels, okay. And then he shows the angels his plan. What's questionable here is whether or not man existed at the time that he showed them the plan. I don't think we even know that. Most people assume man didn't exist yet, but I don't think we know that.
Well, here's one of the things is that God's act of creation is a unified part of his act of existence. So from God's point of view, it's not like he's going along and then comes to a point and then decides, okay, I'm going to create now, where there's a before creation and after creation. Mm-hmm. Creation kind of, the entirety of creation for all time and all space and all matter emanates from God's very being, mm-hmm.
Right.
Complete. It's kind of like, and I have to be really, really careful here because I don't want to, it's almost dangerous to say this without, somebody hears this who may not be able to draw the distinctions. But for example, we refer to the Son as eternally begotten of the Father. And we use that concept of begottenness because something begets something after its own kind. So the Son is of the same thing as the Father. He's the same. He's God, just like the Father is God.
Right.
But in the same sense that the Son is eternally begotten of the Father, in the sense that there's no, it's not like the Father is the Father alone in any sense ever, and then at some point now there's a Father and Son. It's not like that ever. It's kind of the same way with creation.
You think so?
It's like, yeah, creation is eternally emanated from the Father's will. It's, mm-hmm. The Father doesn't, there was never any point where God's like holding in reserve, oh yeah, someday I might create or something like that, because he doesn't experience time anyway. He's just an eternal now, and therefore creation just is because God is.
And since the angel's intellect is part of its being as opposed to mm-hmm. A thing that is learned, it would have been there at the creation, I guess. That's test right. that he was going to give angels.
I think this plan is something that God willed to build into the angels' knowledge at the moment of their existence. And along, I mean, it sounds like there must have been, the option of rebelling against that plan at that moment too.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about, isn't there some point in the Bible where it describes 1/3 of all the angels falling?
That's in the
that's
Revelation.
A lot.
That's the beast tail. Like, well, if you consider, I don't know how people think of angels in terms of numbers and, in terms of how many, but my thought is that, I have to kind of give a little bit of science. So, we think about the universe and the stuff that, that we're made of and the things around us are made of. And you have, like take just a simple thing like a coffee cup, and it's made of ceramic, and you go into the ceramic and there's molecules, and then the molecules themselves are composed of atoms. Well, the atoms aren't fundamental. The atoms themselves are built up of smaller things. You've got these electrons and protons, and then the protons themselves are built up of these other smaller things, these quarks and other weird stuff that's all, so this and they're so small that even just within a coffee cup, there's, billions and billions and trillions and so on of these fundamental particles. Well, and then you've got the entire Earth, and then the sun, which is like, 99 times more massive than the Earth, and even more than that. I think like the sun is 99.99 something percent of the mass of the entire solar system. And then you've got stars that are billions of times as massive as the sun, and then billions of galaxies out there with these other stars and all that kind of stuff. So my thinking is that there are probably more angels than there are fundamental particles in the entire universe.
I would not dispute that, considering when people talk about the universe and how big it is and how many stars are, and it makes your mind wonder. And I mean, that's just stars. I wouldn't dispute that at all.
So when you think of a third of those, and what that means in terms of the population of hell and all the demons then who have chosen a position of hatred against God and against us as God's creation.
Right.
It's kind of scary to think of a third of heaven turned against us. Right.
And so a third of angels fall. They are now devils, demons, whatever you want to call them. We might do a podcast someday. We might do a podcast someday on exactly why. But I think you had brought up to me that it's likely that even before the fall, God had planned on adopting us as His children. Had planned on us sharing in His divinity, and
I think so. That's kind of a. I know that different ones have different views of that. Like the Dominicans, for example, don't view that. Aquinas, as a Dominican, he might have rejected that.
Well, it would solve the paradox that I've always looked at, and because if God's only reason for becoming man was to save us, well, the devil rebelled because he did not want to worship a man god, and he would not have had to worship a man god unless we fell. But we fell because of the devil's temptation. We would not have been tempted on our own. So which came first?
Right.
You getting kind of a circle there.
Right. But if, on the other hand, the plan was always there, and the plan just, it had to change slightly because of the fall, but it was always there, then that at least explains that initial temptation and fundamental choice on the part of the created angels.
Right. And so they fall, and here's man who is perfect in a sense that they perfectly fulfill God's design. And they're wandering the earth, and there's not any mention of Satan until the temptation, which would indicate that because we were children of God and we hadn't turned away from God, we were perfectly under His protection. The devil could not have done anything to except tempt us, which is what happens. So the devil tempts us, and if you follow along in Genesis, it seems like as soon as that happened, it kind of opened up his power over us. He was suddenly able to do a lot of things that he couldn't do before, including possess us and harm us and things like that. Now, there's a spot in Genesis 6, where it talks about the Nephilim. Nephilim? Nephilim.
Oh, the Nephilim.
Okay. Sometimes referred to as giants.
Yes, I've heard that.
And
I've always wondered what those are.
So, we don't know for sure. But some people would say that this is a demon using the seed and egg of man to have a offspring that he manipulated. Since they can manipulate nature, they may have manipulated, and how it would have done it was to say a demon would seduce a man and collect his seed, and then seduce a woman and plant the seed.
Oh, okay. And possibly even manipulating the DNA or whatever in the meantime.
Right. So, and then that may have created these giants that Genesis talks about. Mm-hmm. And then there's a certain point where God puts a stop to that and says no more. Other people will say, no, that's nonsense. They would say that remember that when Cain was driven out, he had a mark on him.
Yeah, he put a mark so that it said any who would kill him would be avenged by the Lord 7 times or something like that.
So it's possible these giants were, or these Nephilim were, how do you say it again?
I thought it was Nephilim, but I might be mispronouncing it.
Okay. These Nephilim were instances where
Nephilim.
Cain's daughters were sought out by Seth's descendant, and they were crossbreeding there. Whereas the Cain's descendants were bad and Seth's descendants were good, and they had created something that looked kind of odd, maybe.
So these Nephilim are, when they say they're the offspring of the sons of God.
So that would have been...
These would be the fallen angels?
They would be... The sons of gods would be...
Because you could imagine that they're still angels, and they have that immediate... They're not sons of God the way the Son is begotten of God, but they've got that immediate creation of God. They're not created generationally by other angels having children or anything like that, and so they could be referred to as sons of God, even though they're fallen.
Right.
It'd be like,
if you're going to follow that choice of translation, that could have been what happened.
Okay.
And again, they collect a seed and then they plant the seed, manipulating it at some point.
Okay.
Anyway, we do know that the devil had a lot of free reign, and then he lost it.
Yeah.
And shortly thereafter, there's the deluge.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly all of that offspring was wiped out.
Right. Okay.
And after the deluge, the devil has even less power. He doesn't lose his power as in he's naturally less able to do things. He loses power as in he's less allowed to do.
Right. Okay.
Now, that's where you get to the book of Job, because we've got...
He goes to God and says, hey, I bet Job would turn against you if you let me afflict him.
Right. But what's odd about it is, first of all, God calls a meeting, and Satan shows up. And he says he had been out patrolling the earth. So Satan's walking around looking at things, and God starts bragging about Job.
Yeah.
That's how it all starts. And Job challenges God and says, let me have free reign.
You mean the devil does?
Right.
Right.
No, I think I think the word is Satan.
Yeah. But you said Job.
Did I? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Satan challenges God, right?
Satan challenges God, and he's given free reign. He's not given any special powers. He's given the freedom, not the ability. And he does all those terrible things to Job, and we know the rest of that story. Right. I guess the major point there is just, again, emphasizing that Satan's limitations are from God, not from its nature.
Okay, yeah. Okay. God change the nature of something once he creates it.
Right. And then Jesus is born. And for the first time, man is given special authority over Satan. And before that, it had not been given to anyone.
Yeah.
As far as I know,
there's no indication, I think, in the Old Testament of I don't know, the Old Testament priests doing exorcisms or anything like that.
Right. So now we've got demons who had already been limited in a certain sense. They're not allowed to run around, killing people and causing all kinds of havoc. And now they're given even less power because man himself is given power over them in Jesus' name. And also it's a select few people. It's not just everyone. Which brings us to demons and humans and how they interact. And that's what I was going to say for next week. Unless you want to record it this week and go into it.
No, I wouldn't be ready to record it. But that's that is a something we should touch on and maybe explore, make it a point to explore next week, though, is so on a level, God has, he intervenes and suppresses demons' natural ability to manipulate the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
But it appears that there's also some kind of human intentionality that's involved as well, because, for example, we know that demons do possess people, but we also know that they can't do it without some hook, some kind of
opening up of
invitation, on the part of the person.
Yeah, I would say that's usually the case, but for example, I think there's a couple instances of very young children being possessed.
Oh, okay.
And there's one in Iowa that I think it's called Satan Be Gone. You can find it on the internet and you can read it. It's a documentation of a... Hold on. There's this case in Iowa that was documented that this woman had always been a pious woman, but her father cursed her while he was alive, and later is one of the entities possessing her after he's dead.
Oh, wait. Okay. This is new to me. I had never in my life heard of the idea of a soul of a deceased human possessing another human. I didn't think that was a thing.
And that's the thing. There are still people. That's why some people would either argue against this whole case that was recorded and say it's a lie. Some people would argue that there was a devil, but that the demon was lying. It's not actually her father possessing her.
Okay.
And there's also the possibility that maybe the demon that once possessed or once pestered the father is now pestering her.
I see. Is this an actual possession though, or just pestering?
It's actual possession. It was a pretty serious case, and it's like everyone in the parish could hear the wailing and the terrible noises they were making.
Screams and stuff. Wow. Wow.
And it's another one of those cases where it describes buckets of things like macaroni and cheese being vomited, and just things like that. It's some nasty stuff. But you can, I think it's called Satan Be Gone, and it's, maybe a 1 or 2 day read. If you read real slow, it's a couple days, like I do. But you can find it anywhere. I just copied it and pasted it into a Word document, put it on my phone and read it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. But if you're one of those people who get worried about demons and who obsess over them, you probably shouldn't read it.
Don't read it. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So next week we're going to talk about humans and demons, how they can and should or shouldn't interact, and talk a little bit more about the intellect of demons and angels.
Mm-hmm. Trying to understand a little bit about how that works.
Now, here's the thing. I did not look up current events.
Yeah, neither did I. In fact, I've only got one. By the way, before we get off the subject of demons, there's one that I have from the land of nonsense.
Okay.
and it's really stupid. I mean, you'll see, but there's a painting. It was originally attributed. I didn't realize this, to Hieronymus Bosch, who painted a lot of art that kind of dealt with concupiscence and our inclination to evil and that kind of stuff. But it was later found, a signature was found on it later that clarified that it was actually by a fellow named Peter Bruegel the Elder.
Yeah.
It was painted in 1562, and it's The Fall of the Rebel Angels. And
okay,
if you look at this
I think I've seen
painting, it's like, you see a few good angels, battling, the rebel angels into hell or whatever. But there's this like column that of the falling rebel angels that just stretches like out to infinity almost. It looks like it keeps going and going. It's a painting that is pretty effective at kind of getting across this sense of the massive scale of the host of angels. That it's also it's kind of interesting. This is 16th century, and when you look at some of these angels, I mean they're all these weird combinations of various natural animal parts and imagined parts, and it's like that people back then, this is
right.
Renaissance era, I think, would have the imagination to come up with some. I mean, this is the stuff of modern horror masters, and it's like that. That's our modern age. Is certainly not the invention of bizarre imagery.
Yeah, definitely not. And I guess the fact that Satan's been here all this time, it's the horror is real. That's the crux
isn't
of
imaginary, it. Right?
Yeah. That the thing about when as I started looking into this stuff, one of the big questions on my mind has always been, how much does the demon have to do with things like abortion or the Holocaust, things like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I've just always assumed that that he has everything to do with it, because I can't imagine, when you look at a baby, you see a baby. Now you're going to kill a baby. I can't imagine a demon not being involved in that somehow.
Right. That's how. Yeah. The rejection of that. What is the most natural human instinct of protectiveness.
Right.
When you see a baby, and the idea that you can reject that, and there's here's the thing. And I think the people who the more completely people see the reality of a baby in a womb and choose the path of supporting, participating in, providing, etc., abortions.
Yeah.
I think that is itself a invitation, a opening up. I think they're inviting Satan to take residence, or some demons to take residence in them, and to keep their mind twisted in that way, so that they never see the truth.
That would make a little more sense, because I mean, there's the story about the I guess it was one of the ladies who were a part of Planned Parenthood, and she had killed thousands of babies, and then she was converted. And I mean, she's the person I would ask, what was going on in your mind before that? And she had said that she just didn't think about it. She didn't think this was a problem. It's not like she saw this and wanted to do bad things. And that's what I always got confused at. Why could she not see that? Is that because of the absence of God's grace? Or is that a direct assault on her? On what? What happened? How could?
Yeah.
And the same thing with things like the Holocaust and even certain aspects of slavery here in America. You can't convince me this isn't somehow demonic.
No, there's. I mean, there might be like a huge number of people that through very subtle temptations by Satan choose to ignore something like that, but there's people who are like directly in it, and for them to be able to inflict that kind of evil directly and to see it and not be repulsed by it, but to instead revel in it. Yeah, that has to be demonic.
Yeah, maybe, and it could be something that they'd done a long time ago that did invite it in.
Right.
To keep them from seeing that. Okay, so for current events, now we've put sanctions on Iran. We've demanded that all countries cease purchasing oil from Iran by May 1st, or they will face sanctions.
Oh, okay. So
we're stepping it up.
All right. Yeah, and I haven't looked at any news in the past week. So do we have any kind of like United Nations cooperation or anything on this, or is this just a U.S. only thing?
As far as I know, it's just the U.S.
Okay.
But you know what? I mean, we'll see. I mean, when we say when Trump says something, generally the other countries are like, "Yeah, I'm gonna talk against it," but they have to do it. I mean, it seems like that's been the case a lot. When they said, no, we're not going to put up the money for the UN, and then suddenly they are putting up the money. Things like that.
For NATO, for example. Yeah.
NATO, I mean. Yeah. Now, so there's a planned visit between Kim Jong-un and Putin.
Oh.
So I don't think that's not very good.
No, that's a bad thing.
That's not good for us at all. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Kim Jong-un ordered the execution of 4 of his own guys because he accused them of selling information to the U.S. Before the Donald Trump's summit
Okay.
For the one in Hanoi.
Right.
So I would say overall it looks like the situation with Kim Jong-un is getting worse.
Yeah.
I mean, where it seems like all the talks that we had are kind of breaking apart. Those 2 stories, and now we've got another story. This is from the Washington Post. Now, you give me your gut reaction to this after I read it, and I want to see if you have the same one I had. They are saying that, remember the release of Otto Warmbier? That guy from Cincinnati?
No, from
North Korea. He had been a prisoner there. He had been released and he ended up dying.
Is he a journalist?
No, he was just some student that was over there and he was arrested.
Oh.
They kept him for a while. Trump was bragging because he got him out,
and then he died.
He died right away here in Cincinnati.
From like
stuff that had happened to him.
Beatings or what?
Yeah, beatings and malnutrition and stuff like that.
We would say they murdered him.
I think when they delivered him, he was actually in a coma.
Okay.
So,
wow, man.
Washington Post is saying that North Korea is demanding $2 million because they claim that Trump had agreed to pay them $2 million in, quote, hospital bills in exchange for getting the prisoner.
I'd send over $2 million of nukes.
Yeah. No, but
to Hanoi. Say, here's your $2 million. Okay. Choke on it.
The question is...
I would...
Donald Trump supposedly agreed to this.
Mm-mm.
Or at least that's what the Washington Post is saying.
Yeah, no. I don't think he did. And if he agreed to something, he certainly didn't agree to pay them to put a guy in a coma and send him back.
Right. That's how I think.
And I hope Trump takes enough affront at even the suggestion that he takes a strong stance against Korea's claims there.
I gotta wonder if it's even Korea's claims.
You think maybe not even North Korea's making the claim?
Well, obviously, I guess they did they are demanding it, but it's Washington Post. The way it was reported, it's Washington Post, North Korea. Oh, okay, yeah, they did. Okay, I was thinking maybe Washington Post just made that up, but
I don't think they would make something like that. They'd have something that at least they would be able to point back to.
So I don't think Trump did that, and because I remember he kept talking about the fact that he got him back and he didn't have to pay for it the way Obama paid for those guys from, where was that? Iraq? Not Iraq. Didn't Obama drop like several $1 billion in cash off to... That was Iran.
Was it Iran?
Yeah.
Just to get some...
It's like four prisoners released. He claims it wasn't a ransom, but it was.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Trump talking about that and bragging about getting the guys back from North Korea without having to pay for them. But now the North Korea is saying you owe us... I think this is a way to make Trump look bad, and because of the breakdown of whatever was happening in North Korea.
I think, that sounds more...
That's
more
probably
likely.
what this is.
Yeah.
So all of that is not good. 8 people were injured in Sunnyvale, California, when a car intentionally plowed into them.
Oh, wow.
But I don't... it doesn't give us any information. Again, guess who we're hearing about? The victims. Guess who we're not hearing about? The perpetrator. What is that?
Muslims?
That tells you right away that it was a Muslim.
Probably.
They never talk about the perpetrator when the perpetrator is a Muslim.
Yep. Yeah. If the victim's Muslim, you say that right up front. That's the lead.
Right.
If the perpetrator's a Muslim, you can't even put that on page 3. I mean,
right.
It's got to be buried.
You never even say it.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's just yesterday there's one person killed, more people wounded in a shooting in a synagogue in another place in California.
Oh, really?
So there's
the
shooting
Muslims
in a
are really
synagogue.
stepping it up, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I'm still convinced that look, you've got a building that was built when the only way of light was fire. That's how you lit things, with fire. You had candles, torches, this giant building that was entirely lit up by fire. And in all that time, the building didn't burn down.
Yeah.
Now we've got electricity where there's hardly any fire, and somebody's cigarette starts a fire.
That doesn't sound reasonable.
I mean, you will never convince me that Muslims didn't do this.
Yeah.
We're talking about Notre Dame, by the way. Most people probably know that, but...
wait. They're saying it was a cigarette?
Yeah. Well, that's the last I heard. Is that a
cigarette? Notre Dame
worker.
Cathedral brought down by a cigarette? That's BS. There's no way.
That was one of the reports.
When
the place was still burning, they said, we have ruled out arson.
I don't think.
I don't know how you rule it out when it's still.
No, you have to investigate before you can rule something out.
Yeah, it's insane the way they don't want to say who did this.
What they meant was we've decided we're not going to call it arson.
Right.
We've ruled out the possibility of stating that it's arson. That's what they meant.
Yeah.
Why is everybody bending over backwards?
I don't know.
Because
the leftists, I don't get it.
Yeah,
These people are so much anti-left.
That's what I mean. It's not like
weird.
Muslims support leftist causes, but you know what?
They don't.
The leftists, they're not afraid of Muslims. They're afraid of Christians.
And that's even weirder because Christians don't kill leftists.
Exactly. But you know what? Christians are effective at converting people because we convert through love.
Yeah.
And so
I think it all boils down to that. Yeah.
That's what they're afraid of because we're good. We're everything that they think that they're. Hey, we're. That's why the leftists are also going after this vocabulary with things like calling things hate crimes and that kind of stuff. I mean, all of this stuff is a way for them. They get their agenda. They say, hey, everybody has to get on board. And then people say, well, wait a minute. Personally, I'm going to choose a different morality. And that incenses them. And the only reason that person chooses a different morality is because they see the love of Christ. And they say, I'm going to follow that. And that incenses the left. And so they have to fight against that. Well, guess what can fight against it? It's Muslims.
Yeah.
And then of course Muslims, if they could use the Muslims to wipe out Christians, taking a very naive kind of linear view of things, if they could use Muslims to wipe out Christians, well then it would be easy to create laws against the Muslims because they really are in many ways hateful. So the left isn't afraid of them.
They think that anyway.
Yeah,
they got another thing coming, but
exactly.
You let these Muslims take over, you're going to be sorry.
Exactly.
like they have
Right,
in
right.
parts of Europe.
Yep. So I don't know. That's yeah. It's right now the Muslims are the left's
Champions.
standard bearers against
Yeah.
Christians.
Now, NASA has reported the first detection of a likely Marsquake
Oh, cool.
by the InSight Mars lander.
So, like,
one of the
like-
probes that we send over there.
like direct seismic readings kind of thing, or
We think.
okay. I mean, you would imagine that there are quakes on Mars,
Right.
but why not? It's a planet.
Well,
It's
I
got-
do. Geologically, is Mars active? I don't know.
Well,
Is there a core to Mars that is molten the way there is?
right, the way Earth is. That's I don't know.
And not just
I
Earth's,
guess-
but some of the moons around Saturn and Jupiter have
right,
that kind of stuff.
right.
Lava stuff. So,
Well, I would think that I don't know what the internal mechanisms are that cause Earth, for example, to have a molten core and that kind of stuff. But I would think that anything large enough to be a planet would have the same kinds of internal stresses and stuff that would cause heat to generate. And I don't know, maybe it has to do with the composition, but
right.
it seems
now
to me like a planet would behave like a planet, I guess.
Yeah. The probe that was put there was InSight was specifically put there to study the deep interior of the planet.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming that, it was seismic activity.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, this next one. So Donald Trump administration tried to initiate.
What's it say?
It would have restricted doctor-patient communications about abortion in family planning clinics. Oh, I know what
He's trying
this
to keep.
is.
Yeah, he wants to
Okay.
keep family planning clinics from having doctors say, "Well, we receive money for federal money for family planning, so I can't give you an abortion, but go over there, they'll give you one."
Okay, and
Which is great. I mean,
yeah, so that was his initiative. Right now, it's being gagged by another judge. Let's see, Washington State. Some guy in Washington State is going to decide things for the whole nation.
yeah.
So, but hopefully that makes its way through the courts, and hopefully our judges do the right thing.
Yeah.
Let's see, the LIGO LIGO detected a second neutron star merge with its gravitational wave signal that we talked about. What did I call those? The ripple in space-time.
Right. So are these neutron stars that are merging, that they're seeing these things, are these things that are happening inside the Milky Way galaxy?
You know what? I did not find that out.
Okay.
I don't know. And nothing really says it. I guess
probably. I mean, I know these things are extremely sensitive, but if you're talking about from other galaxies, it would seem like there would be too much noise because it would be happening all over the universe then, and these are probably within the Milky Way that they're detecting.
Yeah, again, I don't find anything about where this is taking place. I wondered that last week, and I never did find out.
Huh. Well, maybe there's a
it just keeps talking about black hole collisions, and nothing tells you where these black holes are.
Huh.
I believe they are in the Milky Way, though. It wouldn't make sense if they weren't.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about monitoring a galaxy, it's something that far away. I don't see how you would see any kind of ripple.
Right. Or, I mean, you might, but the thing is, if these things are happening in other galaxies, then they're happening in millions of other galaxies.
They would be happening in our galaxy, yeah.
Well, but coming from millions of other galaxies, you wouldn't be able to detect one particular other galaxy. It would just be noise. So I think these are probably local.
Okay.
Well, in a sense, the scale we're talking about, then calling it local sounds kind of funny.
Yeah, but it is.
Yeah.
Okay, Trump has announced at an NRA meeting that he will be withdrawing from the arms trade.
Okay.
Which was one of Obama's deals. See, I always go back to Obama getting caught on the mic when he didn't think he was. When he was telling, what was he telling the ambassador of Russia? To tell Putin he'd have more, or to tell someone in Russia that he would have more flexibility after the election. When they were talking about getting rid of American military power.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
I don't remember that one. Doesn't surprise me, but...
Yeah, you search for it. It's pretty bad. And it's like, all this talk about Russian collusion, and we've got a president who says something like that.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
That's why... Here's the thing. This is I don't know, why I get so frustrated over the stupidity of Americans. Why doesn't that cut the Democrats out of any possibility of election for the next 50 years?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's...
Why is... And it's just ignored, and it's like, you can't ignore something like that. This guy's...
Right.
That's worse than what Nixon did.
Selling our country out. Yeah.
That's all I got.
Okay, well, all I've got from the land of nonsense, and it really is, I mean, it's just stupidity, and it's another Obamaism. Obama and Clinton. So the, you know about the bombings of Christian churches in Sri Lanka on Easter during Mass.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, Easter Sunday, Sri Lanka. Anyway, it was like several churches, though, not just one. Coordinated bombings on Easter Sunday, killing at least 253 people.
Wow.
That
should have been part of our...
of Catholic churches. Yeah.
Jeez.
That's... Now, so we were talking before about how, okay, if the victim are Muslims, that's the lead. If the perps are Muslims, you don't even say that.
Right.
If the victims are Catholics, you can't say that either, because that, you get points for being a victim in the leftist calculus.
Yeah.
You can't give Catholics points, so
Right.
Catholic victims, you can't do that. So Obama and Hillary Clinton had to scramble they had to say something, and so they had to scramble for a way to characterize what went on here. Catholics were bombed. They came up with the Sri Lankan bombings of Easter worshippers.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
That's
Worshippers. Easter worshippers.
Easter worshippers. They couldn't even bring themselves to say Catholics or even Christians. They're
That's so
Easter
disgusting.
worshippers. It is disgusting.
I can't believe that these people were ever... I can't believe they got a single vote. Either one of them.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, there's just...
Worshippers.
The stupidity of people like that, the Obamas and the Clintons, and, their completely transparent hatred of Christianity.
Yeah, and
that,
the big thing about this is, and look, this is what people have to focus on things like that, and with pretty much everything we've talked about. Mm-hmm. You have to fight this stuff. Yeah. If you sit on the sideline, this gets worse and worse until they're just flat out killing Christian. You have to fight. You have to fight all these things we're talking about. These Muslims bombing. You have to stand up against it. You can't be passive about these things.
And you got to call it what it is. It's Muslims bombing Christians.
Yeah, they're
period.
hate mongers.
Not,
they're bad people. Well, okay. Is that all
that's
we got?
My one.
Okay. Yeah, next week we're going to get back into these demons, and we're going to talk a lot about what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And I think some people will be kind of surprised.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
so thanks for listening, and think about what we said, and circle the beads, and we will see you next week on a podcast about CatholicThings.com.